Welcome to another episode of the Gridiron Report. I'm your host, Glenn Olson. On this episode, we'll go over last week's action in the 2-minute drill, review updated conference standings, look ahead to Week 7, and I'll be joined in studio by Roger Bacon's Michael Blout and Steve Rossi. Don't go anywhere. We're headed to the Gridiron right now. Let's see how the football teams in the ICRC family fared in Week 6 in the 2-minute drill. Let's get after it. For the second year in a row, Mason hung in there with the Colerain Cardinals for most of the game, but came up short in the closing minutes, losing 30-16. Mason senior quarterback Preston Hutchinson had 2 touchdown passes, and Matt Sora once again led the way on the ground, but Colerain's 309 rushing yards were too much to overcome. In another GMC tilt, the Sycamore Aviators were on the road against the Fairfield Indians and led most of the game. The tide began to shift in the third quarter, and the Aves fell 35-27. Sycamore quarterback Jake Borman had 307 yards passing, but Rayvon Bonner was limited to 88 yards, well below his 145 yards per game average. Looking now at the CHL, Marymount suffered their second defeat in a row, this time losing to the Wyoming Cowboys 38-0. Super sophomore quarterback Wally Rennie had 159 yards passing and 60 yards rushing, but the rest of the Warriors offense couldn't seem to get in gear against the tough Wyoming defense. The Reading Blue Devils bounced back from their loss to Madeira last week with a 59-0 thrashing of Finneytown. The Indian Hill Braves made easy work of Taylor with a 42-0 win. Over on the east side, Milford scored 2 late touchdowns to edge Walnut Hills. Dawson Sloan and Tyler Smith led the way with over 300 yards combined rushing and 4 touchdowns. In the SWAC, the Mount Healthy Owls remained tied with Edgewood at the top of the standings after defeating Clarkson, Canada 21-14. Michael Crawford had 2 touchdown passes and 1 touchdown run to pace the Fighting Owls. Harrison rebounded from their Week 5 loss to Edgewood, emerging victorious 48-13 over Talawanda. Frankie Young lit up the Braves for 309 passing yards, while Gerald Smith caught 3 touchdown passes from Young and added 2 more on the ground. Roger Bacon fell to Dayton area powerhouse Kettering Alter 65-13. Finally, the St. Bernard Elmwood Place Titans moved to 1-1 in Miami Valley Conference play with a 58-30 trouncing of New Miami. That will do it for the 2-minute drill. We'll be right back.
I see my friends out there getting waves and talking about them, and I know exactly what they're doing and what they're feeling and everything. It's like, it's hard. I was diagnosed when I was 57. It was a surprise to me when they told me I had MS. It's like, sure?
Well, the idea is this is a 360-degree virtual reality camera rig. Steve hasn't been able to ride a wave in way too many years, so now I'm going to ride a wave and we get to share it with him. Well, we're going to do something.
Just put that on your head.
Whoa.
This is unreal. Coming up, coming up, coming up. Boom. Nice, nice. This is fantastic.
Yeah, let me set it up and you get another
Set it
ride.
up. Let's do that again.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Report. With every passing week, each game becomes just a bit more important than the last. As we get ready to head into Week 7 action, let's go around and take a look at how ICRC schools are doing in their respective divisions. You saw on Friday Night Football last week, North College Hill was able to shut down Cincinnati Country Day 20-2. What does that do for the standings in the MVC? In the Scarlet Division, North College Hill currently remains on top with a 2-0 record, 3-3 overall. North College Hill is followed in the standings by C8CA and Summit Country Day, and in 4th place is Cincinnati Country Day with a 3-3 record overall and 0-2 in the conference. In the gray division of the MVC, St. Bernard got an important win over New Miami improving their record to 1-1 in the conference and 2-4 overall. In the GMC, ICRC's other Friday night game was featured as Princeton improved to 5-1 overall and 2-1 in the GMC with their win over Lakota West. That was good enough to see them jump over Mason in the standings from 4th to 3rd place. With their loss to Colerain, Mason fell to 4th. ICRC's other GMC school, Sycamore, lost to Fairfield in a close contest, dropping their record to 2-4 overall and 1-2 in the conference. In the GCL co-ed, Roger Bacon is now 0-3 in the conference and 2-4 overall. Bacon is currently in the cellar of the Central Division, however, with one win, can find themselves back in contention. In the ECC, Milford improved to 1-2 with an overall record of 2-4. They are looking up to Turpin and have a tough hill to climb to get back in the title picture, including games against perennial power Kings and much improved Anderson. Over in the SWAC, Edgewood is on top with a 3-0 conference record. Mount Healthy isn't far behind with a 2-0 record and 6-0 overall. Harrison improved to 2-1 in the conference to remain in the hunt and keep it a 3-dog race. Finally, in the CHL, Indian Hill and Reading were winners, while Marymount fell to Wyoming. The Cowboys remain on top with a perfect record, followed by Madeira, Indian Hill, and Reading, all remaining in the title picture. That does it for this week's conference standings review. Stay tuned. I'll be joined in studio later by Roger Bacon Athletic Director Steve Rossi, but up next, I'm joined by their head football coach, Michael Blout. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Take a good look at yourself. Oh, yeah. Check that smooth backside. No, really, check it. If you're a man over 50, you're in the group most likely to develop skin cancer, including melanoma. When detected early, skin cancer is highly treatable. Check yourself out and find someone else to help. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Welcome back. We are pleased to have Roger Bacon Spartans head coach Mike Blout in studio with us. Coach, thanks for coming on the Gridiron Report.
Great, thanks for having me.
Coach, a little bit of a young team for you this year.
Yes.
You had some guys that had to step up last year for you and maybe into some roles a year ahead of schedule. How's that gone for you so far?
Pretty well, especially beginning of the season. We started out 2-0. And a lot of guys just had to gain experience. They gained it last year, and we took our lumps last year. And so they came back bigger, faster, stronger. And so this year, we came out 2-0. A lot of the kids, Trey Henneke's my quarterback and Chris Kugley my running back, are two kids in particular that, they kind of earned their stripes a little bit last year. This year they came out, and they're two kids that we count on heavily.
Great. So when you talk about those kind of kids, what are the indicators of success you're looking for as a head coach to let them know that they're maturing into their roles?
Right. Well, Trey is the quarterback. He's, he kind of runs the show. I've known Trey since he was a little kid, so I've kind of seen him grow, and it's great. He's got great command of the offense. He's a great athlete. He's the fastest kid on our team. He's got a good enough arm to make big plays, throwing the ball when he's not running it. Chris Kugley has grown up physically a lot from last year. He's come in and he can pound the ball pretty well as outrun some kids. So it's great to see them just grasp what we want to do, and they're not thinking now. They're actually just going out and playing.
Sure, understand. Now, Coach, this year your team was able to get off to a 2-0 start, non-conference play. It's been a little bit of a bumpy road since then. Are you seeing the signs of progress you want to see in your team?
Yes. We had to come out and play McNick, and anytime we go into our GCL, it's tough. All of them. There's none of them that are easy.
Right.
And McNicholas, Mike Orlando does a great job coaching those kids over there, and they always have a good, solid team. And we came out and we lost 30-27 to them. Really competed, had a chance to win it near the end of the game, and we just played her too short and ran out of time. Then we had to turn right around and play Baden. And Hamilton Bate, once again, they're tough. They're never going to roll over. And we struggled a little bit against them because they run the ball. And then this week we had to turn right around and play Alter, which that's always a tough one, no matter who's playing them.
Right. Alter, just amazing what they're able to do out there.
Yes.
Being in the division they're in, but then you look at their sidelines like they've got 100 kids dressed.
Yes, they do.
On the
yes,
sideline.
They actually had a little over 90 dressed against us the other night, and we had 30.
Yeah,
so it was a little bit of an unfair fight. But our kids fought. They beat us bad, but our kids fought to the end. And scored 2 touchdowns on them, which I think that surprised them a little bit.
Right, yeah. Well, good for you guys. Let's talk to this week's, we're in week 7 now. You're
Yes.
facing Dayton Chaminade Julian.
Yes.
And this will actually be a true home game, as you will be back in Braun Basovich Stadium after the flooding.
Yes.
What's that mean to your team to get back home?
I think that's a big thing. I always send out an email to the kids and to the parents, and my headline this week was return to normalcy. We're finally back to a normal schedule. I don't have to change my practice schedules. We get to play at home, and I think the kids are pretty excited. I just came off the field with them, and it was just nice to finally be back into some kind of a normal routine, because we haven't had a routine here in a while.
Sure. Now tell us a little bit about some of those accommodations you had to make with not being able to play at home, find somewhere to practice.
Right.
What did you have to do?
Well, we have a small practice field that's great for doing certain drills, and we can do a lot of things on the practice field, and thank goodness we had that, because we would have had some trouble. But the boys soccer team had to use it, the girls soccer team had to use it, and so we had to accommodate each other. And then eventually we got to a point where we were running out of things we couldn't do any of our long game. We couldn't do the kicking game. So we went down to Ludlow Park, which is in St. Bernard. And so that's grass. Well, we don't play on grass. So we had to get used to the grass.
Right.
All of a sudden kids got allergies that they didn't have before because we're so used to the turf. And so it was a hindrance, packing up the equipment and moving every day we weren't used to that at all. And, and so we had to do that. And now that we're back on a full field, it's amazing the difference in our kids' attitudes and everything.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you can do the things you really want to do
Yes.
week in and week out to
Yes.
get your team ready. So talking about Dayton Chaminade Julian, you and the Eagles offense seem to be scoring at a comparable level. What are your keys to victory going to be in the game this week?
Well, the biggest thing is we have to stop the run game. They've got a couple skilled kids that they can score from anywhere. And we have to stop them. Their quarterback is a good runner. Their tailbacks are really good. So we have to be able to shut them down. And then on the flip side, we got to be able to run the ball against them.
Right.
And we've had some pretty good success, especially early on. We had some success running the ball. So we're going to kind of go back to our basics and do what we do best.
And are they doing anything unique you haven't seen yet this year, either offensively or defensively? Or?
Yes, they're in a different defense. They're in a 3-3 stack, which we haven't seen, which is a version of the 50 defense. And then they will go into a 50 defense, but we have not really seen the stack defense before.
Okay.
But we think, once again, if we do what we're supposed to do and execute, we should be fine.
Your kids seem to be grasping that and what they're going to have to do to
Yes,
attack
yeah.
that.
Yeah, today was the first day we got to go against it. We saw it on film on Saturday, saw it on film again today. And then, once they got to see it on the field, they were like, okay, they understood where guys were going to be and all that.
Right. Now let's talk about the GCL co-ed for a few minutes.
Yes.
Very competitive year in
Yes.
and year out in
Yes,
the
it
two
is.
different divisions. And I realize this is hard being the head coach of one of the programs, but if you were to step back and look at it, in an unbiased manner, who are those teams that just seem to compete year in and year out there in the GCL?
Well,
co-ed?
for the central part, it's McNick. It's McNick and Baden. They've been kind of dominant here the last couple of years. And, McNick, I think they're on a 5 or 6 year run here now of winning it.
Right.
And like I said, Mike Orlando does just a heck of a job with those kids. And then you take the northern teams, it's Alter. Fenwick had the heck of a run last year. They had an unbelievable
Sure did.
senior class.
Yeah.
They were phenomenal and beat Alter. But typically it's Alter
Right.
that comes out of that northern division.
Right. Now you're in year number 2
Yes.
at the helm
Yes.
of the Spartans program. What is your plan to get back and be competitive with those teams you just talked about?
Well, it all starts with we got to get some bodies in the school. We're the smallest of all the schools except for Purcell, and they're right. Us and Purcell are about the same size.
Sure.
Everybody else is bigger than us. Everybody else is a division ahead of us. But that's not an excuse. We still got to be able to come out and compete against those guys.
Right.
But we need the bodies that are in our building. There are some athletes that in the building that I would love to have on the team.
Right.
We'd love to get those kids out, and then each of the incoming freshman classes that are coming.
Right.
We need to build up those numbers.
Now, is it a little bit of a challenge for you not necessarily having a dedicated junior high feeder program coming into
Yes.
the high school? Or?
Yes, it is. And when we lost the boundaries, for each school that had that really affected us, because with us being so centrally located, all of our feeder schools were centrally located.
Right.
Well, now they can go to Moeller or X or LaSalle just as easy as they can come to Bacon now.
Right.
And so it is difficult for that. But once again, that just means we got to go out and work harder.
Right. Now, talk about this year's team again now for a moment. we talked about the younger players you've had that had to step into some of those key positions. Who are some of your seniors that have stuck around and are now getting to their senior year and providing leadership for you?
Right. Well, Trey Henneke's my quarterback. He's a senior captain. He's a 2-year captain.
Okay.
He kind of guides the offense and runs the offense. And then on the defensive side, we got Hazen Pettit, who's also a 2-year captain.
Mm-hmm.
We were so young last year, I had to have 2 junior captains,
right.
which is rare, but
Sure.
they were great kids and they do a great job. So those two, Trey leading the offense and Hazen on the defense. Clark Wilhoit, he's a kid who moved in from Kentucky, and he happens to be 6'6", 300 pounds. So
that always helps.
That helps. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So Clark has come in and anchored the one side of our offensive line. He's getting a lot of college offers and looks and things like that. So he's come in. Zach Bauer anchors the other side of our line. He's our other captain. So those 4 in particular. And then Mike Hill and Tyler Combs, 2 of our offensive and defensive line guys. Tyler played receiver for us and defensive end. And unfortunately, he broke his leg Friday night in the game, he's out. But Tyler was a heck of a leader, and we're really missing him now.
Yeah, sure. Hate to hear that.
Yes.
Hopefully a speedy recovery
for
him.
Yes.
So we had a chance to talk a minute before we came on the air here. You're an alum of Roger Bacon, played
Yes, I am.
football there.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what that means to you to be able to be the head coach of the program you grew up playing in.
Well, it was, I grew up there as a little kid also. My 3 older brothers went there. My mom was in PTA, my dad was in boosters. So as a little kid, I was there. I was hung around with Coach Basevich when I was a little kid,
Sure.
and all of that. And so I bleed brown and white, and I love the place. And I always wanted to be a head coach, but I always knew I wanted to be the head coach of Roger Bacon.
Right.
And when the opportunity arose, when Kevin Huxell finally retired from coaching, it was my shot. And my wife is a grad. My father-in-law was a grad. I have numerous cousins that were grads. I have a son who's a grad, and I have a son who's a freshman. And so it's in the family. And you can see my shirt, Faith Family Football. That's the name of the game right there.
Yeah.
And so I believe it, and I trying to get the kids to believe that, and we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Well, Coach, we certainly wish you the best of luck on your game Friday against State and Chaminade Julienne. ICRC will be out to cover the game, and looking forward to the first game back in Braun Basevich Stadium in a few weeks and get you guys back on track.
Yep, that's right. Thank you.
Appreciate you bringing the helmet that will add to our trophy wall back here. Give it the place of honor this week on top.
Perfect.
Well, Coach, thanks again for joining us.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Athletic Director Steve Rossi right after this.
I see my friends out there getting waves and talking about them, and I know exactly what they're doing and what they're feeling and everything. It's like, it's hard. I was diagnosed when I was 57. It was a surprise to me when they told me I had MS. It's like, you sure?
Well, the idea is this is a 360-degree virtual reality camera rig. Steve hasn't been able to ride a wave in way too many years, so now I'm going to ride a wave and we get to share it with him.
Well, we're going to do something.
Just put that on your head. Whoa. Oh, this is unreal. Coming up, coming up, coming up. Boom. Nice. Nice. This is fantastic.
Here, let me set it up and you get another
Set it up.
ride.
Let's do that again.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Report. We're fortunate enough to have Roger Bacon Athletic Director Steve Rossi in studio with us. And Coach, you're the first athletic director we've had on the Gridiron Report so far.
Good. Glad to be here.
So far this year.
Okay.
So we wanted to talk with you a little bit about the situation you encountered due to the flooding, and we'll refresh people's memories at home. It was like a 100-year flood that hit the central part of Cincinnati in early September, and let you take over the story from there and what it did to your school and facilities.
Okay, I actually think it was on the last Sunday in August, if I remember correctly. And we were having a meeting up at school for our Hall of Fame in our stag, and we noticed it started to rain. Then we noticed it started to rain harder and harder and harder, and we couldn't see outside. But we've had those types of rains before. Then Coach Blount came in because he would just come from the field. 10 minutes later, somebody texted him a picture of the field, and it already probably had about a foot of water on it.
Wow.
So I said, guys, we got to end this meeting. We got to get down to the field. So we drove down there and went down there, and it was literally a foot and a half up our leg.
And still raining at that point?
And
Or-
still raining some
Wow.
at that point.
Wow.
And we were centrally focused on what was going on down at the stadium, but not realizing what was happening in the rest of St. Bernard.
Sure.
Just some of the streets just flooding, cars moving, and then in the back of my mind, I wasn't even thinking about what may have been happening in the school.
Right.
That took on some damage also.
Right.
So a little over a month ago, like you said, 100-year flood, and fast forward to this past Monday, we're back in business.
Right.
We acted really quickly. School was shut down for a couple of days, and we got cleaning crews in there, tons of volunteers, dozens of people came in to help clean and volunteer and do whatever they could do, and we were able to get whatever needed to be done in the school ready to go so that come Wednesday, we were back in school.
So let's talk about first the impact on the community, because I know being the type of school you are, dedicated to service, how did the Roger Bacon family respond to the surrounding community in those early days?
Okay, well, it was incredible. We were getting flooded with pun intended, flooded with calls. How can we help? Where can we go to help? What can
Right.
we do? So people sort of came to school to sort of centralize what was going on. And, later we started to figure out, that there are people on this street and on this street, and then in Norwood that was affected by this. So
Right.
the calls started to come into here, but we started to say, we don't quite know how we need people to help yet,
Sure.
especially at the stadium
Right.
with the flooding, and we just didn't want anybody to go down there when we shouldn't have had anybody there.
Right.
So let's kind of focus on the community here and see what needs to be done up and around the community. But the outpouring was incredible.
That's great to hear. So the field floods, how long until the water subsided?
It was down the next day.
Okay.
By the evening of the next day, it had subsided, but but underneath it was rumbling around for a while.
Yeah, so what was your initial assessment once the water had receded and you go down to see the damage that was done? What's the first thing you noticed?
First thing we noticed was just how dirty it looked.
Yeah.
From if you go to the top of the stadium, it looked normal, but once you actually got there, put your eyes onto it, you could tell that this is in bad shape.
Right.
We need some help here.
And how old was the playing surface at this point?
It's about 9 or 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you contracted with the Moats Group to come in and
Right.
begin the repair process. What was that process like for you?
That was incredible to work with the Moats Group. It was done. We started immediately. The good thing about it, we acted very quickly. Our head maintenance man, John Powers, called the Moats Group that evening, Sunday evening, I think probably 3 or 4 times. And come Monday, they knew what was going on over there. They were out on Monday. They came out on Tuesday, and by Tuesday evening, we had a draw up of what we wanted to do.
Okay.
If we needed a new field.
Right.
We first talked about some sort of sanitization process, how to clean it, how to disinfect it.
Right.
But when we realized that it was what had happened with the flood and sewage was on it, everybody decided we can't have this down here. We've got to get it up and out and go with new.
So once you made that decision, what had to happen to make that a reality? I mean, were funds already set aside, or did a plea have to go out to alums and families, or?
A little bit of both. A plea did have to go out, and one of the first things we wanted to do was make sure that we had any type of design ready, what we want it to look like.
Sure.
We didn't want that to delay anything.
Right.
And quite honestly, since we had just finished a rebranding and updating process in our gym and our lobby, that meeting took about 20 minutes.
Sure.
We sort of knew what we wanted all that to look like.
Right.
And some of the things are standard.
Right.
And that's a credit to Moats as well. But once different agencies and groups came in, it looked like insurance was going to help pay
Okay.
for some of this. And I don't know if it's paying for a quarter of it, a half of it, but I think it was enough that where we decided we have to do this, and we're going to have to figure out how to sort of get the rest of the money coming in.
Right. So at this point, you've got a plan in place to get the surface replaced, which is going to take a period of time, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it
We
ended
were
up being.
thinking 6 to 7 weeks.
Right. But in the meantime, you've got teams that need to practice and play games. So
Right.
if you could give us some insight onto what you had to do there to make sure your kids could keep practicing and keep playing.
Right. Well, one of the first things we did was make sure we communicated with all the coaches that we can't be at the stadium. We've got this small turf here. We're going to have to make some things work. If we go later, we go later. Fortunately, we had some games lined up that teams didn't have to practice on. First, we had to make some calls immediately to find a couple places to play that very next day. Big shout out to Mike Sipes at St. Ursula. He was able to get us on to their field more than once so that we could rest easy on a few dates, and we started to piece things together. But our girls soccer coach, Tom Eckert, made a call out to St. Rita, and they were gracious enough to let our girls soccer team go out there and practice.
Okay.
So now we're down to a couple different teams using the small field, and between Ludlow Park down in St. Bernard, and just being able for the two teams to be able to coordinate when they practice, we were able to make it work.
Right.
They were inconvenienced for a while, that's for sure. But again, with the Moats group doing what they did in the time and the manner in which they did, sooner came.
Right. So you've been able to get back on sooner than you were initially anticipating. What is it that Moats Group did to make that happen for you guys?
Well, one of the things they did was they came out immediately and started to take the turf out. And we can also thank the weather because they had no delays in work.
Right.
They also knew how important it was to us to get back as soon as we can. So they were able to get a crew and a half to sometimes 2 crews down there and work all day long. A lot of times later than they normally do to make sure that happened.
Right.
We're also lucky that it happened in September.
Right.
I don't think a whole lot of football fields are being laid in September.
Right.
So they were able to pull extra men to get down there and do that, and their removal process was incredible. I believe it's a system that they've patented on how to extract the turf, cut it, and get it out of there. That was done literally in hours.
Right.
So.
Well, great.
Yeah.
So you've got the new surface in. You mentioned a few minutes ago about some of the new features and design things you want to do. What were you able to incorporate with this new surface?
Well, one of the things that we did is we took our Spartans logo that we have in the gymnasium, the font, the coloring, and we wanted that in the end zone.
Okay.
Before it was just plain green with white Spartans, Roger Bacon Spartans in the end zone. We wanted to do brown end zone. We wanted to do the alternating color of every 5 yards. We outlined the football field so it's bold. We made sure that the soccer lines really popped, and we were just able to sort of make those things happen. And a lot of it's standard now. That Moats came in. Here's a couple of choices that we do now. It's A or B, and we kind of sat and looked at each other and made a few things work, and we decided this is how we want it to look.
Sure. And what's the feedback been from your players, especially your senior players who, were looking at the reality of maybe not playing on their home field again?
Right. A lot of it was thank you. Thanks for working with the group to make sure that this happened. And one of the things we wanted them to know is we wanted this to happen for you guys too. And that's one of the things that the Moats group understood was, it's not just Roger Bacon wants to get back on here for the last football game, but these senior soccer players want their senior nights basically next week.
Right.
So a lot of them were very, very interested in when it was going to happen. Are we going to have senior night? Are we going to do it here? What's going to happen? So we're just really lucky that we were able to make it happen for them.
Yeah, well, that's great, and a testament to you and your team that you guys were able to get that done, as well as to the Moats group and the parents and alumni that all came together to make sure those kids had that opportunity this year. And we're looking forward to showing that off Friday night, your game against Dayton Chaminade Julienne. ICRC will be there to cover that and be able to do the first video shoot of the new field there. So
great.
We're looking forward to that.
Well, good.
Well, Coach, thanks again for coming on, or Scott, thanks again for coming on. I enjoyed talking with you and you telling us a little bit about what happened and how you guys have been able to come out better than ever.
Sure, absolutely. We appreciate it, and hope everybody can come out October 7th for homecoming. So looking for a great game.
Great, we'll look forward to it.
Great.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the Gridiron Report. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be out to cover Roger Bacon and Dayton Chaminade Julienne Friday night, as well as Fairfield at Mason. That will do it. We'll catch you next time on the Gridiron.